Future be trapping. Future be trapping. Good afternoon, Bereans. Hey, that was pretty good. I'm Chad Berry, VP for Alumni Communications and Philanthropy here at Berea, and I am very honored today to introduce, or perhaps to reintroduce you to my friend and mentor, Dr. William H. Turner. It has been my personal and professional good fortune to walk a path that has often intersected with Bill's. Bill once had, during the presidency of Dr. John Stevenson, our 7th president, and by the way, Jane Stevenson is with us today, which I am very happy about. Bill once had the endowed chair that I am honored to occupy today, the Good Professorship in Appalachian Studies. Early in my time at Berea, I was pleased and honored to welcome Bill back to Berea as a holder of the NEH Chair in Appalachian Studies in the Lloyd-Jones Appalachian Center. There, he was tireless in his teaching of Berea students and others that Appalachia has always been a triracial society comprised of indigenous, African, and European people, an often overlooked fact that contributed, or that connected rather, to Berea's motto that God is made of one blood, all peoples of the earth. Bill has a love of the Appalachian Mountains and particularly its people, and he has a genuine love for Berea's inclusive mission and its commitment to serving Appalachia and its people in the 5th and 8th Great Commitments. Dr. Turner was, during his time at Berea, and remains my mentor and my teacher. His first book, near the beginning of his career, co-edited with the late Edward J. Cabell, remains a classic, published in 1985 and called Blacks in Appalachia. Bill is a natural storyteller in the best mountain tradition, and he has lived a long and fascinating life full of content to share. I'm very pleased that once he retired, he began putting pen to paper or perhaps pixels to screen. And the result is a really wonderful book that I predict will be another classic. It's quite a feat, after all, to produce 2 classics in a lifetime. That new book is The Harlan Renaissance, which celebrates his formative upbringing in Lynch, Kentucky, the Cadillac of coal camps in Harlan County, and its people, especially Black people living at the foot of Black Mountain, who share identities as African Americans and Appalachian folk. It's a story that badly needed telling, and Bill is the most equipped to tell it, as you will soon see. Everyone, please join me in a robust Berea welcome back home to Dr. William H. Turner.
For those of you who speak Arabic, I would like to say Salam Alaikum. To those of you who speak Hebrew, I would say Shalom. And to those of you who speak French, I would say Bonjour and Buenos Dias and Konnichiwa. If we were in my hometown in Harlan County, I would say, how y'all doing this afternoon? Thank you. I want to just start with a caveat, a poem I learned when I was in the 9th grade at the Lynch Colored School. It was attributed to a mystic named Howard Thurman. Dr. Howard Thurman taught Martin Luther King everything he knows. So the poem goes like this. And the context is, I'm going to say some things today that's going to be, somebody is going to say, that's pretty out there, man. You've really gone too far. But I'm going to do it anyway. The poem goes like this. I am tired of selling my little boat far inside the harbor bar. I would rather drown way, way, way out there where the big ships are. And if by chance my failed craft proves too slight for the winds that blow the billows o'er, I'd rather drown out there than stay close to the sheltered shore. Nothing gets accomplished, young ladies, next to the shore. You got to get away from the shore. You got to go way out from the mountain. John Fee, thank you, sir. Thank God for Berea College like no other. And I'll explain in a moment ago why I attribute to John Fee. I should hope that black folk do never lose their stuff. He probably didn't say that, but he probably would have said it. The next one, please. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this space here between the dotted lines that I call West Kentucky. It is where West Virginia, Southwest Virginia, and Eastern Kentucky come together. Culturally, politically, geographically, and in many, many ways, that space is where I wrote my book, about which I wrote my book. Those are the last 4 black coal miners, and I knew every one of them since they were born. Patsy and Ricky and Ronnie and Drina. I saw 2 of them yesterday in Harlan County. I'm sorry, on Monday. Next one, please. How'd I get started? I want to thank Alex Haley, the author of one of the most important books in American history called The Autobiography of Malcolm X. Yes. But he also wrote a book that was very, very popular called Roots. And at the time I met him through Dr. John Stevenson, Alex was on the board here at Berea. And he read this book, I think he thumbed this book, that I helped to do called Blacks in Appalachia about 30 years ago. And he said to me, Bill, I hope you never write any more crap like this. If you write something, write stories. You've written a book that's almost like a scientific, social scientific thing with all these graphs and charts and stuff. He said the world is made up of stories, not of molecules. So, next one, please. Here's why I wrote this book about my experience. Number one, I didn't want it to be said, whatever happened to the black people of Harlan County? What happened to them? Were they ever here? Because they're some of the most fastly disappearing people on the face of the earth. It's blacks in Appalachian coal towns. Secondly, I wrote my book because I do some profiles of people from my region, people who are principals, physicians, doctors, lawyers, dentists, attorneys, accountants. The broad spectrum of human achievement was done by some poor little colored kids who grew up along Looney Creek in Harlan County, Kentucky. And they were some of the most intelligent people I've ever met. The other reason I wrote it, and I say this to my beloved Berea students, some of whom have backgrounds just like mine, if you will get a superior education, you will minimize people discriminating against you. And not only that, if you do get discriminated against, it won't bother you as bad because you'll know how intelligent you are. You know, it won't bother you. Next one, please. My mentor, my teacher, my, hold on a second now. Someone who influenced me more than as much as my father, John Stevenson. Appalachia needs more teachers like John. Chad Berry, thank you so much, Chad. You don't know how much you helped me. Yeah, there you are over there. And everybody knows my old buddy, Laurel Jones, I hope. Go by the Laurel Jones Appalachian Center. Laurel wrote the foreword to this book I was able to publish. John asked me when I met him in 1966 at the University of Kentucky. I'll never forget the day I walked in his office. He was going to be my advisor. And about half a mile away, I smelled this pungent pipe smoke. And I walked in there, and he had his long hair, right, Jane? And he had a tweed jacket on. The next day, I went to the Salvation Army and bought me a tweed jacket, and I went and bought me a corncob pipe so I could be like John. I want to be ready to walk in Jerusalem, just like John. And he said to me, Billy boy, I would never let no white man call me Billy boy except John. He said, Billy boy, you know, I think you ought to commit your life to the study of blacks in Appalachia. At the time, he had helped me be accepted in a program where I eventually was able to go and get a doctorate at the University of Notre Dame. And I said, I'm not going to go to Notre Dame and commit my life to studying about black people in Appalachia, because all I've ever read about white people in Appalachia is some of the worst things in the world. I just read Harry Caudill's Night Comes to the Cumberlands. I had watched the Beverly Hillbillies. I had watched, oh Lord, Deliverance came out a few years later. Justified, I think they claim they filmed that in Harlan County, but they actually did it in Clark County in Winchester somewhere. Oh, the Dukes of Hazzard. They painted white folks who went to Berea as being dysfunctional culture. J.D. Vance said that about them 2 years ago in his book called Hillbilly Elegy. They were banjo-playing, coal-mining, family-feuding, Scotch-Irish, gun-toting, incestuous, moonshining, ornery, semi-literate, toothless hillbillies who handled snakes, and they were Christian fundamentalists. And you're asking me to find the black equivalent of that? No, John, thank you. Next slide, please. But I did it anyway. So let me tell you how I got in this position. This is my father. That's my father's paycheck. I was 6 months old in December of 1946 when Daddy brought home $47.50, and he had worked 84 hours. So if you think you don't get paid for your student labor, oh, I should get more money. You should have been my daddy with 5 children in 1946. I came through the Dallas airport the other day and paid $27 for a sandwich. I'm telling you, you go to these airports, you guys know. That picture over there of that step of what they call stair-step children, I was the youngest then, the one on the short side. I was 4. That picture was taken 71 years ago. I asked my father one time, Daddy, how is it that our mama had 5 children in 7.8 years? My oldest sister, 7.8 years older than me. My sister next to me, to my right, Evelyn. Evelyn is 11 and a half months older than me. I said, Daddy, come on, bro. Explain this to me. He said, well, Billy, you know, buddy, let me tell you what happened. Every morning, the train would come up the holler, and it made so much racket, heck, it was too early to get up. I knew you would find out in a minute. And it was too late to go back to sleep. And so Mama had 3 more children after then. I have 3 younger brothers. And then Mama's friend, Miss Pauline Reynolds, died, and Mama took in her 4 children, one of whom was autistic. And so the 11 or 12 of us, how many it was, and we had 2 bedrooms, Mama's in room and our bedroom. I'm sure none of y'all slept in the same room with your opposite sex siblings, have you? Oh, some people are going like, yeah, we still do that at my home right now. Because the fact of the matter is, I think that's why I'm so close to my brothers and sisters. Because we stayed in the same room. You know, a pillow curtain between the boys and the girls. I can still smell my brother's feet, and he's been dead 20 years. Because, you know, he slept north and south, and I slept this way. My feet were at his face, and that's why me and my brothers and sisters to this very day. So I don't care what Dr. Field says about that. Next one, please. Oh, I want to point out a couple things here. Y'all know that guy right there with his arms crossed? Yay! Where's Andrew? I know I saw Andrew somewhere today. Yeah, Andrew. Andrew influenced at least 40 years worth of students at Berea College. Helped to get the Black Cultural Center started. We owe him a great debt. And I spent a lot of time with him, and he's got that picture there next to, what's his face? Carter G. And they kind of look a little bit alike. So I want to thank you, sir, because part of what I want to talk about, the loss of stuff, Andrew is always talking about that too. Next one. I want to commend you students to my all-time favorite author of all times, the smartest man God ever put breath in, James Baldwin. And James Baldwin reflected on one time, he said, words can be either mirrors that reflect our world, or they can be prisms which have the potential to amplify and distort what we see. And so we've seen these new words coming up for black and people of color as more personable. It's a nice little word. It's about not just black people and blah, 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 blah. Next one, please. But James Baldwin also said many say that even when we use the word African American, people don't like that much anymore. In fact, some people went so far as to say when Barack Obama became the president, we became a post-racial society. When in fact, things got worse in terms of racism and race in America since Barack Obama became the president. So when I talk here, next one please, the word we will be using is black. That's what I'm gonna talk about. So let's don't get the script flipped. Stop saying people of color today, for me anyway. I'm talking about black people. Chad, thank you for saying I focus my life, I'm a one-trick pony on black people in the Appalachian region. Next one. So we're going to use a lot of words today, some of which are going to be rather complex, the way I try to use them in terms of ethical, emotional, political, and other ways of looking at things. So bear with me as we go through some of these things I want to talk about. Next one. I'm going to start with the premise that many black people in the United States have lost their stuff. Amen? They're lost, they're confused, they're unsure, they're unclear, they're perplexed, they're disoriented, they're bewildered. And there are some reasons why. That's what I want to talk about. What they've lost, from what I can tell, is certain things that I learned in terms of racial America. I learned it from my grandmother. As they say, you get your good habits at your grandmama's knee, and you get your bad habits at some other joint. So when I was at my grandmother's knee, she taught me some attitudes. She passed on some beliefs and some customs and some sayings and some jokes and some legends and some opinions and even some prejudices. She would say, "Billy, you watch them old Peckerwoods now?" I would say, "Granny, did you say Peckerwood?" "Yeah, I said Peckerwood." Any of y'all ever heard that word before? "You watch that old redneck?" I remember one time I tried to explain to Granny that redneck came from the Berea Mountain Revolt, and the black miners and the white miners put a red bandana around their neck so they could identify each other, and they were called rednecks. But it got flipped, and now it makes a reference to something else. Grandma taught me these superstitions. I'm so superstitious, sometimes I still, when I see a black cat, I don't want to cross my path. I think every day is going to be my last. Grandma taught me some value orientations. Next one, please. That's my grandmother, Minnie Lee Mabry Randolph, born outside of Macon, Georgia in 1895. She would still be alive, except she smoked all the time. She smoked cigarettes, she said, from the time I was 5, when I would be looking up in the south end of a northbound Georgia mule. Isn't that a wonderful description? I spent the whole day looking up the south end of a northbound mule. Granny was a sharecropper until she moved to Lynch, Kentucky in Harlan County in 1919, where she had my mother and my aunts. And Granny is the one through whom I acquired this stuff. I think Andrew acquired his stuff. I'm sure Miss Patricia Hayden over here, one of my former neighbors, acquired this stuff. I wish somebody knew how to sing a song by Bill Withers from Slab Fork, West Virginia, and the song was called Grandma's Hands. Okay, sing it then. Grandma's hands. Chad? Clapped in church on Sunday morning. Grandma's hands played the tambourine so well. Ain't that the way it went, Andrew? Grandma's hands. Through that song, it talks about the things she understood, how she soothed the local unwed mother, how she'd say, "Baby, Grandma understands. Put yourself in Jesus' hands." That's where she came from. She'd hand you a piece of candy every time you fell, and she'd say to my mother, "Girl, don't you whip that boy. What you want to spank him for?" Grannies don't like nobody to mess with their children, do they, Lori? Next one, please. So what is this stuff? Anybody from the South knows the word stuff. For example, my wife of 52 years, we share a bathroom. Now, the L goes this way. I got the short end, of course. And she has all of this stuff. I made a mistake one time of getting a Q-tip out of this jar, and I didn't put the top back on it. And she said, "Bill, you been in my stuff?" I said, "Wow, how does she?" She's got, her mother, God rest her soul, was the world's greatest hoarder before I knew what the word hoarder meant. Because Grandma Love kept everything she ever had. That was her stuff. And I learned after a year or so of marriage, don't comment about how crowded Grandma's stuff is. In fact, she called them whatnots. Do they still call them whatnots? Yeah, those are my whatnots. Stuff happens. You ever heard of somebody say, man, he talks a lot of stuff? I hope this isn't too indelicate for Berea's most ethical students, but when we were growing up, if a girl was switching a little bit, we would say, boy, she sure can strut her stuff. Your grandmama told you about that stuff. I've even been on the corners and I heard some guys say, man, that's some good stuff. Oh, I'm sorry. But Southerners use the word stuff as an adjective, as a verb, as a noun, as an adverb, a pronoun, a preposition. Every form of the sentence, we use this stuff. So I want you to remember my train of thought here, where I'm going. We've lost our stuff. Next one, please. What is this stuff? I think Berea College, gives its students some very good stuff. You're supposed to say, it sure does. Alex Haley, his stuff was called Roots. James Brown, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. Aretha Franklin, R-E-S-P-E-C-T, find out what it means to me. That stuff. W.E. Du Bois might as well call that great book in 1903 The Stuff of Black People. But he called it The Souls of Black People. The stuff is our language, our manners of interacting, the way we communicate, our thinking, our courtesies, our rituals, our values, our expected behaviors, our practices, our relationships, our customs, all of those codes of behavior. I'm leaving you with the idea today that black people are losing those, and it's to their great disadvantage. I was with some kids just the other day, and I said, I played a trick. I pulled a $100 bill out of my wallet. I said, I'll give anybody this $100 if you can sing to me the first two verses of the Negro National Anthem. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. The kids can go any further than that, LV. They don't know it. Next one, please. These black people in Central Appalachia, just like the white people in Central Appalachia, that's the stuff they learn. The same stuff that Miss Britton, isn't that Miss Britton from Berea over there? I think so. Hardworking, your family is first, you're faithful, you're resilient, you achieve in academics and sports, you're neighborly, you're patriotic, you better have a sense of humor in Harlan County, because if you don't have a sense of humor, people run you crazy. You have to have a sense of humility, because somebody will always put you in your place, which is good for you. It keeps you grounded. And you have to be honest. Those were what Lloyd Jones called what? Appalachian values. Next one, please. This is where you get those Appalachian values. That's not my grandmother ran. That's just what I call a generic black grandmama. That's what all black grandmamas look just like that right there, man. Yes, yes, yes. That's the kind of woman who looks at you and say, act like you got some sense, fool. That's the stuff. White grandmamas do that too, by the way. They say, well, you mean you never heard that before, boy? Lord have mercy, Jesus, child. I'm glad there's a God. Otherwise, you'd be a lost ball in the highways of Georgia. That lady right there. I have that on a made from scratch. Let me tell you a story in terms of how that works. If you hang out in the kitchen with this lady right here, I don't know her name. Her name might be Miss Willie Mae. So let's pretend there was this young lady who went to Berea, and she became a lawyer, come out of Harlan County, and she met this fine gentleman in New York City in the law firm. She took him back to Harlan County to meet her grandmama, and her grandmama cooked the world's best German chocolate cake. The boy got more chocolate to the cake than he did to the girl. They get back to New York, he said, oh, I sure wish you could cook some cake like that. And she said, let me call my grandmama. Now, if she had been following her grandmama right around that kitchen, she would have known how to make that cake. So she called her grandmama and said, Grandmama, how did you make that cake? She said, oh, I just made it out of scratch. I made it from scratch. So girlfriend immediately goes to the local Whole Food store and says, I'm here to purchase a bottle of Scratch. I want a box of Scratch. She didn't know what Grandma was talking about because Grandmama never wrote her recipes down. She passed them to the daughters, but this one lost her roots. Next one, please. I hate this graphic I have here at the bottom. I hope you can see it good. Can you? Huh? Hello? Can you see that good? In 1968, when I was a friend of old Jim Ember that just walked in here, back in the day, I would have called him my Ace Boone Coon. Yes, that's the phrase we used to use, y'all. Didn't we, Jim? Yeah, that was like my main mazane, my main man. What's up, Ace Boone? I still call you that, yeah. So back when we were kids, there were many of us, when we declared black is beautiful, and we called ourselves Brother Jim, Brother Don, Brother Andrew, Brother Dwayne. What's going on, sister? It was brothers and sisters. That's the way the black community worked. Now at the bottom, in 2018, this is after they've been social engineered, so many young people, through media program, to call themselves thugs. And I'm not going to use the N word, but you know it, it's written up there. And they call themselves the B word. They dance to it. They dance to it. They call themselves the H word, or maybe it's a W word, I don't know. But all I'm saying here is that foolishness has been normalized. I know I'm 75 years old, and I'm an old school fool. Call me that if you want to. But at some point, the very values that helped us to make it through this world will be the values that will make you through this world. And if you think otherwise, you are the fool. Next one, please. Who's giving our kids this stuff these days? Anybody in here got a social influencer? Yes, you do. You just don't want to admit it because you see where I'm going with this. Social influencers have replaced grandma. They tell these kids what to think. They look on Snapchat to see what's going on. They look at Facebook to body shame other people. And grandmama said, don't you talk about nobody like that. There's so much good in the worst of us and so much bad in the best of us that what behooves the rest of us to talk about any of us. That's what she used to say. Now these social influencers will be telling you all this crazy stuff, and you'll be thinking things about people you don't even know. Language is what comes through these things, and language leads to thinking, thoughts lead to attitudes, attitude leads to actions and behaviors leads to destiny and fate. I would modestly assert I would not be able to stand on this hollow space here had I let some of my thoughts and attitudes and actions and behaviors come from some people that didn't mean me any good. Because mom would say, he gonna be a fool next week. You better get away from him, boy. He ain't got sense God gave a goat. So what happens if you're a social influencer? What happens to you if your brain, your thoughts, your attitudes, your actions, your very life and destiny, what happens if people whom you let influence you, what happens if they are bat poop crazy? Grandma didn't say bat poop, but I'm not going to say what she would say. But Chad, you've heard that phrase, haven't you? So-and-so is bat crazy. There are a lot of people who are influencing every generation that you just got to decide who's crazy and who's not. And this applies across the board, so be careful who you let influence you. The next one, please. Uh-oh. I like Dave Chappelle, but he's been saying some absolutely ridiculous things about the LGBT community in the last few weeks. So not only does somebody like Dave Chappelle, but a person who once served as a president of the United States, informed, inspired, influenced, and have motivated some people to commit an insurrection against the United States of America. And there's still 70 million of them who think he wanted to be the president. How does that happen? That's called when people lose their stuff. Their brains will get kind of mushy-mushy. Next one, please. So Dr. Francis Cress Wesling, when we think about, y'all remember when Lil Wayne did a song in which he compared a sexual act with the death of Emmett Till? Your generation had George Floyd. Mine had Emmett Till. Lil Wayne said some things that were so despicable in this music about Emmett Till. Even my own children who are, Well, Francis Wilson said, black people are the only people on the planet who have been taught to sing and praise their own humiliation. I'm a dog. You see the words. And she said, if you can train a people to degrade and demean themselves, you can oppress them forever, and then they will kill each other all the time, and they'll never know why they're doing it. Go to Chicago. Go to Baltimore. Go to Detroit. You'll see it. Next one, please. The globalization of the culture means that some new stuff has been made up. People are acquiring it. This stuff, is it culturally relevant? I don't even know what some of those symbols mean. I know what Snapchat and Twitter and Facebook is. But reality has been shaped in such a way that grandma doesn't know what to do. Next one, please. Here's what we've talked about. I'm about done. What is this stuff? Where do people get it? What happens to it? What are some of the consequences when you lose it? What happens when grandma's stuff gets outmoded? And these kids say, we don't do that old-time stuff anymore. Somebody's got your stuff. I would say then, who's your granny? Who is your granny? Who are you getting this stuff from, young people? And I know they said that about my generation, but it still applies. I think this will be the last one. What happens to this stuff? Do those who teach black children respect black culture? Well, if the school systems were like the one that I went through, the lynch-colored school, when they closed the lynch-colored school, they didn't bring any of the black teachers with them. And so the college-going rate in Harlan County went down precipitously when they integrated the schools. And you got more educational achievement gaps in Fayette County right now than in the history of the United States. Why? I don't know. Maybe we need to go back and look at what do we do with that stuff? We threw the baby out with the dirty water of segregation. Now we've absorbed, we've accommodated, we've assimilated, we've acclimated, we've adjusted, we've adapted, we've integrated. Progress, change is not always progress. You can change and go backwards. And that is what we've done a little bit of. Next one. E pluribus unum, America, that shining light on the hill, where you have people from the Navajo, people from Italy, people from Deutschland, from Germany, from Italy, from Ireland, from Spain, all breaths of religion in America. Next one, please. Look at America. In the blue is the most common country of birth of foreign-born residents in America, excluding Mexico, is India. It's India. I live in Houston, Texas. Indians from Mumbai, from New Delhi. So you kids from Berea, you're in a great place because you're in one of the most diverse institutions in the country, and you won't leave Berea off this hill and go to wherever your next stop is and get all bent out of shape when you meet somebody that's not like you, because you would have lived around them at Berea. You wouldn't have gotten this at some other college in Kentucky. I won't call any names. Ever wonder if these immigrant groups, these people from India, from Vietnam, from China, from Guatemala, from Ethiopia, from Somalia, do you reckon if they try to maintain some elements of their culture? You bet they do. They do it. They send their kids to school on Saturday for Hebrew. And we just get something thrown at us every February. I don't want to go there. Next one, please. So keep your traditions, your customs, your values, your folkways, your sayings, your beliefs, all of that stuff. No matter how much this world has changed, black people need their stuff just like everybody else. And if anybody tells you that they don't, you tell them I say they're full of stuff. Okay? Last one, and I'm done, I think. Thank you, Lyle and Lori. God hath made of one blood all peoples of the earth, and that's no stuff. I'm done. Thank you very much. Okay, we have some mics. Look at why you guys are so well trained, man. You know, y'all get some good stuff at Berea, man. You just jumped up and did that so quick. Thank you. Do you have a question at the mic? You should give a sample question, young man. Sample question. Yeah, do you have a question? I'm only kidding. Anybody has a question? I think you want you to come up to the mic, and I'll try my best to answer it. If I can, I will turn it over to Chad. Yes.
Thank you.
And if you don't mind, I don't hear very well. Yeah, okay.
Yep. Thank you. Does this work? Yep. Thank you so much for your talk. It was awesome. My question for you is, do you know why the town is called Lynch? I'm really curious about the history of that in
Oh,
itself.
you are. Thank you. That's an easy one. Okay. First, let me tell you, most of the older black people in my grandmother's generation, they would never use the word, they hardly ever pronounce it as lynch. They pronounce it as lynch. And I used to ask Grandma, that is so grammatically and phonetically unsound. It's lynch. And she'd say, you'll learn one of these days, fool. Okay, so in 1917, a company that owned steel mills and coal mines bought up 18,000 acres in Harlan County, Kentucky. The company was owned by a man named J.P. Morgan, one of the richest industrialists who ever lived, along with Carnegie and the Rockefellers and those people. They were the equivalent of Jeff Bezos. United States Steel. That's who owned our town. The president of the company was named Lynch.
Thank you.
His name was John Lynch. And in fact, if you go throughout eastern Kentucky, you will find that a lot of towns are named after the people who own the coal company. There was even a man who was so arrogant that he named his cars after his daughter, whose name was Mercedes. So, make a lot of money, name something after yourself. All right, thank you, dear. Yes.
Hello, I really enjoyed what you talked about here today. I have a question for you.
Okay.
Growing up black, how would you describe your
Wait,
experience?
slow down a little bit, babe.
Oh, sorry. Growing up black, how would you describe your experience?
How would I describe what?
Your experience?
Growing up? Mm-hmm. Oh, how would I describe my experience? Well, I tell you what, I never went to bed hungry. You know, that's really important. And I never went to bed feeling insecure, like what's going to happen tomorrow, because Daddy was there. Remember, we were in this little bitty room with all these other people. and so I lived in a place that was enveloped by the Black Mountain, it was called. On the other end of the county, it was called Pine Mountain. And so this mountain, and we were down in that valley, and so I didn't have a lot to compare myself to, but we did take Jet Magazine. You familiar with Jet Magazine? Give me your email, I'll send you all the copies. You familiar with Ebony Magazine? Are you familiar with the Louisville Defender? You familiar with the Pittsburgh Courier? The New Amsterdam? See, we have these magazines that our cousins would send us from New York and from Chicago. So we were fairly literate. And I went to the Lynch Colored School in our hometown, Lynch Colored School. And Lynch Public Colored School is etched in the concrete, isn't it, Chad? Isn't it, Dr. Lott? Yes. And so they told us we were colored all day long. All right, when you walked into the school, on each side of the corridor were photographs. Carter G. Woodson was the first one on the left. I saw it the first time in 1952. I was in his first grade. Mary McLeod Bethune, Ralph Bunche, George Washington Carver, Jackie Robinson, just named Marian Anderson, all these iconic black figures. We saw them every day. We didn't wait till February. Then our parents had the Masons, they had the Elks, they had something called the Court of Calante and the Eastern Star. And these men and women, and they had Boy Scout troops, they had Girl Scout troops, and we had the church. And every Friday, we would have to have what they call recitations. And when I was 10 years old, they make you stand up and say, and God stepped out on space, and as far as the eye of God could see, darkness covered everything, blacker than 1,000 midnights down in a cypress swamp. The creation. by James Weldon Johnson. We had to learn it when we was 15, 12. So I had a fantastic youth. And I had the best teachers in the world. Because all those colored teachers had gone to Fisk University and Morehouse and basically Kentucky State University, and they loved us because they lived across the street from us. They knew our mama. My first grade teacher taught my mama. Okay? So we lived in a very cohesive community, a community where people loved you and they embraced you and they made you feel good about yourself and they corrected your behavior so that you couldn't get away with nothing. I'm telling you, because if you went with somebody's sister, he probably went with your sister. So you couldn't get away with too much because everybody said, what you say about my sister? Everybody knew everybody, and everybody knew everybody's business. And that had a way of creating a sense of community. And that's about it.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, yes. Which way are we going? You next? Be right back. Yes.
Hi. So I know you've been back.
I can hear you well. Okay.
I know you've been back down to Harlan recently, and I was just wondering. Well, I have two questions. My first one being, I was wondering if you went back to see the whole towns, if you went back to go see places where you grew up, and my second one being, how did growing up in the coal mining towns influence your daily life, and if it had that much of an impact on you?
Okay, I'll try that. Okay, I left my parents' home. I think I mentioned this to somebody today. When I graduated high school, I had a scholarship to go to college. And I was just ready to go to Frankfurt, where all the colored people went, to Kentucky State University. I was ready to go. And I showed Daddy the letter, and Daddy looked at it. And my daddy was from Southwest Virginia. Anybody here from Appalachia, Big Stone Gap, or Norton, or Pennington Gap? You? Okay, here's the way they talk over there. They talk like this right here, okay? That's the way my daddy talked. So I showed him my letter. He said, well, look here, buddy. Now, ain't no use you going away all the way down there to Frankfurt. You stay right up here with us for 2 more years, and we can go fishing together. I said, Lord, have mercy, Jesus. So I was the first one in my family to go to college, but I went to a community college 5 miles away. And what did I learn from those people? I stayed with them until I was 20. I was 20 years old before I left home. And the one thing I learned from people there that affected my life the most was to be resilient. You know, no matter how it looks, tomorrow's going to come. You know, you just have faith, and you will make it. It'll take some time, but you're going to meet somebody that God has out there in your way, and you don't even know they're there. Mine was called John Stevenson. You know, you run into people, and they'll change your life just like that. If you'll open yourself up to people, because you don't know what the people who can do the most for you look like right now. So as they say, be careful who you insult or who you don't listen to. So I grew up around people who might have been described in the literature as working class peasants. Yes, these were my father went to the 3rd grade. My mother went to the 10th grade. A few years ago, we came home to bury our sister, and I looked around the room with my nieces and my nephews, my brothers and my sister's children. We had 3 girls who had graduated from Hampton. We had 2 girls that had graduated from Spelman. We had a nephew who graduated from Stanford in anthropology. And then he went and got a master's degree from Columbia University. An MBA from Columbia ain't bad for a boy whose granddaddy was a coal miner, you know? And so in one generation, literally, I'll bet you that many of you, Berea gets a lot of first-generation students. You'll change the course of your family's life if you'll do what you've been given the opportunity to do, because you're going to the finest college in this country. And I don't say that to try to impress anybody, but it's very hard to get an education like you get here and not have to pay for it in the sense of this place otherwise costs $50,000 a year. Yes. And so go to your student labor this afternoon. Don't be complaining, you hear? You got it made in the shade. Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
One question I had was, as a society, but especially in the Black community, what would you say we can do to reverse the stereotypes that have been placed on us?
I knew you was going to ask. Somebody's going to say, what you going to do about it? Easy to come up with the problem. What's the solution? I know that the solution is an education. I think that's the foundation of it. And that the notion of family cohesion and the dissolution of families has made a big difference in these generations. But I should hope that part of what we do is go back to those days when we had these organizations that were focused on the improvement, the preservation of black communities, in the sense that if anybody tells you that there's nothing functional or positive about organizations that work to create businesses in the black community, that work to maintain churches and educational prospects, and even in terms of ownership of all of this music we produce for the world, that requires networking. That requires trusting each other and working together, because there are many agencies and organizations and media who work against. They seem to say, why should black people want to do like, you all are segregating yourself? Don't buy that. Don't buy that. And I'm not suggesting in any formal way that you segregate yourself out. But remember, many black people live in all black communities, okay? And in those communities that we say are run down and these communities are degraded and this and that, if you ever notice, many of the merchants who come into that community and take a bag of money home, every night they take it to another community. So I don't want to sound too much like Balance of the Bullets with Malcolm X, but that's what he was saying. If we had taken a closer look when everybody degraded the notion of black power when I was a kid, 20 years old, and we were saying black economic power, and everybody said, oh, that scares me. Okay, shift 50 years later, and people saying, would you let our lives matter? They don't like that either. If you would notice, every time African Americans, my grandma would say this, every time we make one step, they push us back two. I live in the state of Texas, where they are denying people the same rights to vote that they kept my grandmama from doing with the black codes in 1897. Same stuff. It's the black codes are done all over again. And the biggest problem is that many young black people don't understand the history of that. So if you don't know what happened, you'll never know why it happened, and so you won't know why things are happening the way they're happening today. Donald Trump was no fluke. It was no fluke. It was leading that way. It was leading that way because some people became convinced that politics is a zero-sum game. If blacks make progress, they say, somebody loses. If somebody comes from Mexico, somebody... So we're all pushing against each other like this, and nobody wins in that except the 5%. You know who they are. Okay. Is that all right?
Thank you.
Okay. How are we doing on time, Tom? Okay? Are we okay? All right. Yes.
I would like to say thank you, starting off, for coming here and giving this presentation and stuff.
Believe me, this is my blessing coming here, man. That Berea brings me here, okay? Thank them. Yes.
My question is, what if you have, like, some stuff, but you don't feel like you have all the stuff, or your family never gave you stuff to begin with, you know? Like, everything from, you know, your culture to stuff like that.
You're over-processing this, man.
Yeah.
I didn't mean for it to be that complicated. But when you say, what happens when your family gives you too much?
None.
You don't mean material stuff.
Yeah, not material.
So you're saying, what happens if your family does not impart to you certain values and...
Yeah.
I think, well, on the one hand, I think it would not be possible to say, come into a family, all right, as an infant, and let's say become 18 or 19 or whatever you are, without them giving you something. Because one thing that the family can do, what significant others can do, is they can present you images and ideas and values and attitudes that are just the opposite of what you say. I don't want to be like that when I grow up. So they're giving you something by showing you something that you know is negative. You know, how often do you hear it said by your grandmama, you're just like your Uncle Jasper? because Uncle Jasper might have represented a negative image to her. So somehow Grandma gave you something, even if it wasn't the most. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
I'll give you my email and we can write each other and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm serious. Look, I got one right now. You just email me, bruh. We'll talk.
Hello.
What'd I do? Afterward. You just wait till we get there. Yes, I'll give you one. Sure.
In regard to, well, first of all, thank you for being here.
Thank you. for coming.
In regard to culture and stuff, I was wondering, how can we as a new generation impact the ones who are after us?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that because let me make sure you're clear in this kind of critique I've made that there are some people responsible that some of these attitudes and values and behaviors and the stuff I call it did not get transferred, and it's my generation who was at fault. You know, when I was a boy, I used to find myself spitting a lot. That's because I would go fishing with my daddy and his fishing buddies, and I didn't realize that they all had black lung. So they expectorated. Is that what you call spitting? And so you do what you see people do, right? I think in my generation, those of us who are baby boomers, we got so caught up in assimilating mainstream culture that we gave away the opportunities we had to teach our children. So that, for example, the black middle class, by and large, one of the first things we did in the 1970s when we got our doctorates, we didn't stay in communities like the ones we grew up in. We wanted to be the first one out there. So we moved to a suburb. And we put our children through hell sometimes just to say we were integrated. And so when you don't have the doctor and the lawyer and the attorney and the general, these people living in a community where you see them, kids don't have role models. I've even had students say to me, I'm in college, you're the first black teacher I ever had. Okay? So one of the things that happens with your generation is, I would say, is just don't lose touch with the community the way I think a lot of people in my generation did, because they wanted to be assimilated into mainstream American culture, and they also knew when they got into their positions of influence and making a good living and becoming Dr. So-and-so at the university, they also understood they have to toe a certain line. You probably wouldn't guess that I haven't been able to hold too many jobs over the course of my life. You know why? I would say stuff that would get me in trouble. I would sit at the president's council and say, that makes absolutely no sense. You're talking about diversity and inclusion out here on the margins, man. What about right here? And they would all look at me like, Turner. Next thing I know, I'm in Texas somewhere. I'm very serious. I don't regret it because that was my journey. That's what I did. And I was so blessed that I married a really, really smart woman. And Vivian had a much better income than me, so we could afford for me to say, I got to find me another job. I done opened my mouth too many times. But if you can sit there, be straight and be cool and, be cute, they'll keep you on the job for 100 years. But somebody has to stand up, and somebody has to say enough. Yeah. Okay, before I say something I shouldn't.
Thank you.
Hola, what is your name?
Hi, my name is Aja.
Your name is what?
Aja.
Aja.
Yeah.
A-J-A-H?
AJA.
A-J-A. You from West Africa?
No, I'm from the Caribbean.
From where?
The Caribbean.
The Caribbean. Where about, man? That's a big old space.
Antigua and Barbuda. Antigua and Barbuda.
Antigua. Whoa, way down in the
Yeah.
Lesser Antilles.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what do you need, sir?
So
You're a Berea student. How you get all the way up here from the Lesser Antilles, boy?
yeah, I'm actually the only one from my country here, but I found out from the lady who founded the school that I went to.
Okay.
And
Fantastic.
she heard about it and told me, and that's how
You
I
like
came
it?
here. Yeah, I like it.
All right. You wouldn't say no anyway, would you?
I would sometimes. I don't like the
Okay,
cold.
I'm sorry. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah. So back where I grew up, like grandparents and like elder people are very important to our culture, and we have like several people who we'll call auntie, uncle, mommy, pop or whatever, and so like elders. In any respect, they hold a very integral part in our society. But as we've had like more like influence from outside, we've seen more and more need for places like retirement homes for elderly people, and there's less of a role or value put to the elderly people. They're seen as a burden as we move to this kind of rugged individualist kind of thing. But that's something that's already been established here in the US over decades, and so it's more in an advanced stage here. How do you think that like my generation, not only back somewhere where the progress of this thing hasn't gone so far, but even here in the US, can help to increase the value that society has for elderly people so that we can continue to keep their knowledge, flowing through the generations?
Where's the guy that I gave my card to? You're just like him, man. The fellow was here was talking, because you guys are asking such great, complicated questions. I have no idea how to answer what you just said. But I'm telling you, man, I've spent a whole lot of my life around college students, and I'm just so proud of what you all are saying here and what you're asking about, particularly in terms of what they call the griots and the elders whom they held in such high regard in a space like where you grew up. Are you going to go back home when you leave Berea, or are you going to New York City?
I don't know where I'm going to go.
Well, I just want to say that I hope that what I've said about black culture, black people, the continuity, we can't go backwards, but we need to take some of the stuff from the past with us. Here's the way I would put it, sir. Imagine the rest of your life is like a car. Get in your car, but don't let your rear view mirror get bigger than your windshield. Does that make sense? Keep that past, but don't let it cloud where you're going, because you're going to live a totally different life than this 75-year-old, because what are you, not 25, are you? No, of course not. Okay? So you have a long life ahead of you, but you don't lose the perspective of what your parents, what your grandparents, and especially what happens to you in these years you spend at Berea, because we expect you to achieve so much that you will send some of that money back to Berea. This guy shaking his head like, yeah, man. All right with you, bro? All right, man. Yes. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Hola.
So one of the things, sorry, I'm tall. One of the things that my family has experienced coming from Appalachia is that once the jobs ran out in the coal fields, a lot of them moved to bigger cities like Louisville or Cincinnati. And so I know that that's one of the common themes of people in Appalachia, is that once the jobs in the coal fields and coal mines ran out, they had to go to bigger cities to find jobs. And I was wondering if you could provide some insight on how that affected Black people living in Appalachia.
If I could provide what now?
Sorry, provide insight on how, like, jobs in the coal fields as they were disappearing, and how, like, a lot of people had to move to bigger cities to find jobs, how that affected Black people.
You're saying back in the coal fields, you're saying? Are there any jobs left?
Like, when the job...
I'm sorry, see, I don't hear well.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, great. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, so a lot of the times white people in Appalachia, like the jobs in the coal fields would run out, and
Oh,
there
yeah.
wouldn't be anything else like left there. So
Right.
a lot of people would move to bigger cities. Like
Right.
my mom's family moved to Louisville and to Cincinnati.
Okay.
And so that really disrupted like their family ties, because part of my family lives in Pikeville, like Eastern Kentucky, and
Right.
then part of them live in Louisville. So you talked a lot about like the family dynamics that are a part of black communities and black families. So I was wondering how that job insecurity affected black communities.
Oh, okay.
specifically.
Thank you, thank you. If I get one more profound question today, I'm just going to say, Lord, have mercy. Well, let me tell you, I lived through a transition period when it moved from men working in the mine, basically with picks and shovels, to a point of mechanization where my father, after a lawsuit, got a job running something called a continuous miner. My father went from making roughly $38 a day to making $200 a day. Okay? He did, running this big machine. And he said, Billy, this is wonderful for our family, buddy, but you know what? This put 250 boys out of work. Because that one machine would replace everybody in this room in one day. I can never forget how we went to a church about a third this size, and they had a roster with every member's name, the Turners, the Browns, the Greens, the Clarks, whomever, and it showed how much money they put in church the week before. I don't know if y'all grew up in a town where they did that, where they wrote down at Pilgrim Baptist Church, the Turners put in $3.50. Well, it got to a place every month, not only would you not see how much people were putting in the church, but if you got laid off on the mine, you had to get out of the town. And so people would leave in the middle of the night because they owed their soul to the company store. They were in debt to the company. So they'd go to Cleveland at 3 o'clock in the morning, and the next Sunday you go to church and you say, hey, the Pettigrew's name ain't on the roster no more. And Daddy say, they left last week. They left last week. So that the number of black people in my hometown right now, when I was born there was 4,300 of us. That seems like about twice the size of Berea College, right? Well, now there are more people in this room than in my hometown. Okay? So you talk about the family dynamic of people leaving and families being split. Consider this. My sister Evelyn lives in Richmond, Virginia. My brother Tony lives in Cincinnati. My brother Jeff lives in Indianapolis. My brother Carl lives in New Orleans. My sister Marie lives in Southfield, Michigan. Now, guess what that does to our family dynamic? Thank God for Zoom. You know, because we all went different places. And it was that way for a lot of the families that we know. But on the other hand, when you consider this, we did what the anti-migration people, you know when they talk about chain migration? It's a bunch of them from the same part of Guatemala. They all come to Houston. They come from Jamaica, and they go to a certain part of South Bronx. Those of us from Eastern Kentucky, we're pocketed in cities where a bunch of us there's 24 people I knew from families in Lynch, Kentucky, where I grew up, and we all live in Houston. And I see them all. We go fishing together. Same guys I went fishing with when I was 10, I fish with them when I'm 75. Because and now my children and my grandchildren know their children, their grandchildren. So these migrations, it broke us up. But boy, you'd be surprised. A lot of y'all that went up that hillbilly highway to Detroit. And y'all got any folks went to Detroit? Yeah, they went and they found each other up there. So that's the family dynamic. So I'll bet you your family, the ones of whom that are up there by Jeannie Wiley State Park, there's still some in Louisville, I hope, that are still getting together. Because there's something you can't do to mountain families. It's pretty hard to break them up. Yeah. All right? Merci beaucoup. Don't y'all have a 4 o'clock class? They're staying here too long, aren't they, doctor? I'm just kidding. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thank you for being here with us today.
Say that again?
Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for being here.
I just wanted to ask, how much can you fault black people for losing their stuff? And
much can
then
I do what?
How much can you fault black people for losing their stuff, especially when assimilation was a lot of times out of survival? And then how can we work to either preserve the stuff that we have or work to reconnect with the stuff that we lost? Or is it even worth reconnecting with?
Okay. Now, I tried to say a moment ago, and that's a great question. All these questions, I told y'all I'm sweating. Y'all got me sweating up here. I don't run out of answers. But I think we are creatures of our own making in some sense. So I'm not blaming anybody, but you do know that we do live in a culture where the globalization of culture, the homogenization of all cultures, they even got it to the place where people who grew up in Southwest Virginia, who have a certain dialect, it's like when you go somewhere else, you don't want to talk like that because you want to speak standard American English and not that y'all-bonics or that ebonics that we tend to do. So my point is in terms of the loss of these cultural things, they're not lost. For example, the Berea Library has one of the most extensive collections that you can go to if you were for example, wanted to find out things about black, isn't it called the Mountain Collection? It's still over there, right? Yeah, sure. So right here at the college, any student at Berea who is from the Appalachian region or who wants to know about the Appalachian region, in terms of all these values and customs I've been talking about, it's just right over here in the library. And I think that the responsibility for young people is to know that age-old cliche, if you don't know where you have come from, you will not know where you are going to. Okay? Okay, baby girl. Yes, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right. Can't you pull that up so you don't have to lean over?
Let's see.
Where's the mic,
There we
man?
go. So my question's pretty similar to Ugo's, actually. I'm currently taking a class on cultural appropriation.
Cultural appropriation?
Correct.
Ooh.
And we've been recently talking about the cultural appropriation of black communities. And so I was just wondering, with how much cultural appropriation has happened in black communities now, how should we go about retrieving all of that stuff that we've lost, that black communities have lost? How would you suggest, other than, because you just kind of answered it, going into the archives and going and getting that kind of stuff, but is there anything else you could say on how to get that stuff back? Because we've lost it generations past, how we could reverse kind of that cultural appropriation without appropriating it even more?
Okay, first way you could do it is as you're walking the campus for the rest of your matriculation and you pass people, you say, don't let nobody take your stuff. Okay? Start there. Cultural appropriation. Well, there's nothing new under the sun. So that when you look at where we see this borrowing, they call it, that cultures always borrow. When you get a chance, when you get to your next computer, Google the following. It's called The 100% American by Ralph Linton. Can you remember that? The 100% American by Ralph Linton, an anthropologist. I think he wrote it in 1948. And the story of the 100% American talks about this. Let's think about this person who says, I'm 100% American. They ain't from here. You know what they say about certain immigrants? We're 100% Americans. Well, this 100% American, he goes to bed at night and he prays to a God that is not an American. And he gets up in the morning and drinks some hot brown stuff called coffee that comes from Colombia. And throughout the day, this 100% American uses all of these things that had no origin in America. You see? So we're constantly borrowing like that. I'm doing something right now that has really helped me to learn something. I do a podcast called Sepia Tones, okay? And Sepia Tones, what I'm doing with a fellow at East Tennessee State named Ted Olson, and we're looking and interpreting the contributions of African Americans to country music. Okay? Everybody knows simply that the most iconic instrument in country music is a banjo. But try to tell that 100% American who loves the Grand Ole Opry, try to tell him that that instrument comes from the Gambia. It was called a crow, the banjo. That they were playing this amongst the Crow people of Ghana. Try to tell people that the Carter family, icons in country music, was influenced by black musicians. Don't try to tell them that the original Colonel Sanders chicken recipe came from a black man named Riley down in Corbin. Don't try to tell them that Jack Daniels Distillery, the first whiskey was brewed by a man named Ernest, Uncle Ernest. The Jack Daniels family just came out with a new liquor based on this bourbon that a slave, an enslaved person, distilled and gave it to Mr. Jack Daniels, and you know the rest of the story. So Elvis Presley, for a long time, I remember one time my grandmama said, Lord have mercy, he just went in and stole that girl's hound dog. You know, there was a woman named Big Mama Thornton. She had a song called, You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog, crying all the time. Elvis Presley came along and made that. They put him on television, and they didn't want to see him swiveling his hips like a black person. 1956, Ed Sullivan Show. Because Elvis represented everything that white mothers and fathers of the middle class didn't want their sons and daughters to see because his music was so sexualized. Where did he get it from? On the streets of Memphis. Now you turn around and Eminem, is that his name up there in Detroit? Is his name Eminem or something like that? You don't know Eminem? I know Eminem. You don't know Eminem? Well, he's a very popular rapper, isn't he? Yes. White as the driven snow. Because white children consume more rap music because they buy it. Black people copy it and give it to each other. I know that was quite a stereotype. But my point is this cultural appropriation. I have a section in my book on cultural appropriation. Yeah. It has to do with my interpretation of a movement called the Afro-Latin poets. And I wrote about it because I said, where'd you get that from? Because there was this idea that no black people had ever been existed in the mountains of the South until the word Appalachia came along in 1990. Nothing could be further than the truth. 100 years ago, Carter G. Woodson came from West Virginia to Berea. All right, I told y'all I was going to say something I shouldn't have said. May the Lord watch between me and thee while we absent one from another. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you so much. Hey.